Do you need a new mic test? Okay. No, we're
Okay.
good. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, welcome to our 2022 primary election candidate forum featuring the candidates for Spokane County District Court Judge 6, elected by the voters of the county-wide. I am Ann Murphy, your moderator, and Mike Bell of the League is the timer. Election day for 2022 general election is Tuesday, November 8th. Ballots will be mailed to all registered voters beginning October 19th, and the return ballot must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, November 8th. This forum can be seen as an equivalent to a job interview as you, the voter, learn more about the candidates seeking to hold office, and you, the voters, are the ones who will determine by your vote and making your informed decision for hiring your representation when you mark your ballot. Citizens can register to vote by mail or online at votewa.gov by October 31st, 2022, or in person on Election Day at the Spokane County Elections Office or Center Place in Spokane Valley. For other questions about casting your ballot or information about the candidates, contact the Spokane County Elections Office 509-477-2320 or visit their website, spokanecounty.org/elections, or on the League of Women Voters online voters guide, vote411.org. I will be asking the candidates questions that have been formulated by the League's Voter Services Committee, and will ask as many questions as time allows. Before the questions begin, the candidates will have up to 30 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the voters why they are running. They will have up to 1 minute to answer each question with some additional time for rebuttal or a follow-up question as appropriate. And each candidate will have the opportunity for a 30-second closing statement. The first speaker will alternate with each question. And now to meet the candidates. They are Andrew Biviano and Deanna Kroll. So starting with you, Mr. Biviano, you'll have 30 seconds to tell us why you're running for District Court Judge.
Hi, I'm Andrew Biviano, and I'm from here. I grew up here in Spokane Valley and chose to raise my kids here. And I've always wanted to serve my community to the best of my ability, whether that be as a mental health case manager at Frontier Behavioral Health, as an assistant U.S. attorney here in town, as a private attorney working on civil rights and discrimination cases, or as a judge pro tem as I'm working right now. I would be honored to combine that experience and bring my unique perspective and background to the job of full-time judge, which is a very important job that I know I can do well.
Thank you. And Ms. Kroll, why are you running for this position?
Thank you. I chose Spokane to be my home when I came over here as a freshman at Gonzaga University. I went immediately through to the law school, and my 20-year legal career I've spent inside the courtrooms in district court. The last 3 years I've spent on the bench there, filling in for judges when they're out sick, they're on vacation. I see what is amazing about our courts, and I see what can be improved. And I think what a better opportunity to give back to the community than to sit on the bench as a judge.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll start delving into some things about district court judges. So we'll start with you, Ms. Kroll, and these will be 1-minute answers. What are the kinds of matters that would come before you on the district court, and what, in your experience, prepares you to handle these? And what do you see are the most important issues facing the public that appear before you?
So what we have that comes before the district court judge is divided into civil and criminal. We have 2 judges currently who preside over small claims, protection orders, name changes, infractions, but the bulk of the cases that come before district court are criminal in nature. We have 6 judges that cover alpha courts, A through Z, and our therapeutic courts, mental health court, veterans court, district courts, intensive supervision. I have spent most of my career handling criminal cases. courts. I've done civil work as well. I've presided on the bench, as I mentioned, for the last 3 years handling these matters. So I have a unique perspective not only as a prosecutor, defense attorney, but on the bench. The biggest concern that I've heard is community safety, and that's always a priority for me when there's a case in front of me, especially criminal in nature. Is the community safe if this person is going to be released? So individuals in the community are concerned about that. They're concerned about release of defendants. Those are the concerns.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biviano.
Deanna did a great job summarizing what the court does. It does the whole breadth of criminal and civil matters. Really important issues are protection orders for when people are seeking to keep themselves safe from someone who's threatening to do them harm. Small claims is also very important. People need to resolve disputes in a way that it's through the law rather than through their own means. And every case is important to the person who brings it, whether it's a criminal or civil matter. The concern I see most in my time on the bench as a judge pro tem is the fact that people want to be kept safe, and they also want to make sure they can trust the court system to get it right. There's a lot of skepticism nowadays of whether the government can still do its job and protect all of us. And that's why my campaign is focused on the public safety aspect and the public trust aspect. What I really bring to the job that I think is unique is my background working in mental health and with people in crisis, with people who are struggling, who often are the same kind of people who are there in front of the court, needing therapeutic court or otherwise. And I have that learned experience that I can use to make their lives better and the public safer.
Okay, thank you. You've both talked about skills that you have, but what traits do you possess that would make you a good judge? Mr. Biviano.
Sure. So I find that being a judge is a combination of my legal background and my mental health social work background in a really nice blend. It's partly legal scholar, knowing the law and how to apply it, but the other job of a judge is to walk alongside somebody as they're going through a crisis. If you're in court, it's not a good day, and you need a judge who understands that, is comfortable with that, and can still be there and listen to you and make sure you're seen and heard and all the facts come out, even if you're not your best self that day. I think my patience, my compassion, and my legal scholarship all combine together to make me the best fit for the people who come before me, who often thank me after they've had their hearing, even if I ruled against them, because they appreciate the fact that I gave them that respect and I understand what they're going through. So while everyone on the bench is qualified, and I have nothing to say about anybody else, I think what qualifies me here is that trait, to be the person that has that comfort and that unique skill set that makes everyone feel comfortable in court.
Thank you. Ms. Krull?
Yes, thank you. So I think experience is the biggest thing. I've worked with individuals representing them who are seeking protection orders. I've worked with individuals who are defendants seeking to resolve their case. I've worked in the mental health court, in the veterans court, in the therapeutic courts. So that breadth of experience, but beyond experience, is just the passion to continue to learn more. I go to groups to hear updates on the law. I volunteered to be involved in judicial committees across the state in the public outreach and therapeutic courts. I have I like to think I have the demeanor. I'm patient, I listen, and everybody wants to be heard. At the end of the day, they want to make sure, again, regardless of the outcome is, that they feel that this judge understood, heard, and that they had a fair opportunity. So I believe that I'm able to do that, as well as balance out community safety, victims' rights.
Okay, thank you. What role should a judge play in advocating access to justice, and what have you done in your career to enhance this capability of access to justice? We'll start with you, Ms. Krull.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a huge role. A judge should not just be a bystander who presides when they're on the bench. We need to be involved in the community off of the bench as well. I have, just as I mentioned, been involved in the public outreach. How can we get information from the courts to be transparent to the community? Our therapeutic courts, how can we get these programs to the individuals who need them, who have specialized needs, such as they need to get a driver's license, they need to get their social security card. We need to be involved to help individuals. I hear and have had clients who are minorities. They struggle with the ability to get forms that they can understand. So I think it's a huge role. It's important, and it's incumbent upon judges to recognize We need to do better. We need to make sure everybody has access, and it's on us to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Biviano.
Let me be clear. It is the primary central responsibility of a judge in the court system to ensure access for all. If that's not accomplished, the court system has failed. We have a system that entitles everyone to a fair shot and a fair hearing. This is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. It's been what I've been working on for almost a decade now in private practice, has been disability rights and disability access. I brought a number of cases against government institutions because of the lack of access provided to people with disabilities, mental health or otherwise, within different public services. And as a judge, it would be my central job and always thinking about whether everybody has a right and ability to get into the court, whether it's physical access, whether it's mental health access, whether it's language barriers, economic barriers, or whatnot. We're not doing our job if people are not given those tools and those accommodations to make sure they can participate in their justice system no matter who they are or where they're from.
Okay, thank you. And now to maybe move a little more specifically, we here in Spokane have we have real and perceived racial equity problems. And so how would you use this position to help mitigate those problems specifically?
Sure.
Mr. Biviano.
Again, a very important question and an issue that judges need to be at the forefront in leadership on this question. The data are there that show the outcomes and the disparate impact that different arrests and charging and sentencing has on different racial groups in Spokane. As judges who oversee the entire judicial system, we need to be asking ourselves why, studying that data, and finding real solutions. And central to that is going to be that we have to have the impacted groups at the table with us. Not just sending in letters, not having an advisory panel that we can take or leave their advice, but rather in the room where decisions are being made to understand exactly the how and why these disparate impacts are happening. And so that will be a big mission of mine in the court itself and advocating outside the court to policymakers, whether at the state or local level, and to the public about what the issues are, where the problems lie, where the solutions are, and how we can all move forward together to solve them.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kroll.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to talk just more specifically. I had the opportunity to go to Judicial College this year, and that's from being appointed to the Airway Heights Municipal Court bench. And what I saw there was amazing. I saw judges across the state wanting to make sure that we're addressing these issues. I see that the legislature and changes are being made in order to carry down to the specific courtrooms. For example, GR 37, it's not just was there an issue with bias, but could there be a presumption of bias? And so we are working hard to address these specific things that come to our courtrooms. I do agree that judges also need to take the time to be involved in the community and ask them, what are you still seeing as barriers? What can we do better? And address those issues, be open to communication and conversations. And again, transparency is key. But I am pleased to see that we are making changes.
Okay, thank you. So we will go, the next question will start with you, Ms. Kroll, that shifts gears here a little bit. What is your plan for effective management of your docket?
Thank you. Well, I think we need to be on time. We need to be efficient, and that means we need to be knowledgeable. We need to hold attorneys accountable to make sure that they're professionals inside the courtroom, that they are ready and prepared as well. I have a lot of ideas of what to do, but these are the basic things that should be happening now that sometimes we don't see. But I also have plans for how we can go further, making sure that the individuals understand when they're in the courtroom in front of me, here's what's going on. You have a right to an attorney. Do you have an attorney in a criminal case? In a civil case, have you had everything explained to you that you need explained? We can't advocate, we can't be lawyers, but we can make sure that the process is running smoothly and that the individuals have had access to what they need to have in order to make that hearing go well.
Thank you. Mr. Biviano.
The key is preparation and hard work. You have to be prepared before you go into the hearing for that docket to go smoothly. I had a docket this afternoon with the actual hearings, but I did my work last night to review all the pleadings and the evidence to make sure I had the legal knowledge I needed and the facts pretty clear in my mind so that when he got there today, everyone could go smoothly through their case and get the results quickly. So that has to happen every day. And I know judges work very hard having done that, and full-time judges have many more things on their plate. And it's that extra midnight oil, so to speak, of making sure that every day you're putting in the work you need so that tomorrow you're ready and can be there to make it go smoothly for yourself, for the lawyers, and for the litigants.
Okay, thank you. So now let's talk a bit about the therapeutic courts as an alternative to incarceration. So let's talk about what courts we have, how many individuals are served, can everyone be served, how many staff are involved, and what might be the success rate of our current therapeutic courts.
Okay.
Mr. Viviano.
That's a lot to address in
Yeah,
1
I
minute,
know,
so
I
will-
know. So hit the high spots.
You know, therapeutic courts are always near and dear to my heart because they're one of the first courts I ever appeared in, not as a lawyer, as a judge, but as a mental health case manager. I would usually accompany my clients into those courts to advocate that they were appropriate for services and that we could have better results by sticking with me and the programs we had for substance abuse or mental health to let them recover from the underlying conditions and get back to their better selves. It makes everyone safer. And so I am eagerly looking forward to being a full-time judge that could be involved in those courts and continue that process for our community. True accountability means addressing the underlying problems that led to the problem behavior. And true safety means making someone less likely to reoffend in the future. And the therapeutic courts do both of those things. So the programs we have now, whether it be mental health court or veterans court, they are incredibly successful. I think we should looking at expanding eligibility whenever possible. Obviously not everyone can be, but we should look at each case hard to see if it's possible and keep going with that great progress we're making.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kroll.
Yes, as Mr. Biviano mentioned, we have the mental health court, we have the veterans court, we have the intensive supervision therapeutic court and district court right now. The hope is eventually we'll have a domestic violence focused court. I can tell you I've never had one client say, why did you put me in this court? They're wonderful tools for individuals who are ready to accept help. They have, and they're not easy. That some people say, well, they're not having jail, they're getting their charge reduced. They have to be in court even after their case has resolved, sometimes twice a month for 2 years. They have to do treatment. Treatment's monitored. They have to check in sometimes weekly with their probation officers. These are the steps that it takes to reduce recidivism, and it can happen with individuals who are ready to do that. So I am a huge proponent, but at the same time, I've also said, look, we need to have flash sanctions in these courts. When they're not doing what they're supposed to do, we need accountability now, not accountability next month. So.
Okay, thank you. So I want one more question relating to this. What are the pros and cons of developing more courts? We've heard mentioned that a domestic violence court is in the offing. Are there other types of courts, and what would be the pros and cons of moving those forward? Ms. Kroll, we'll go with you.
Thank you. And so I think anytime we can get more narrowly focused on an individual's need, whether or not it be mental health, addiction, or domestic violence, that's better. We can have services narrowed and tailored to that person. Airway Heights Municipal Court just got under $500,000 grant to open its community court, and it's been amazing. There's money and resources out there to be used, and so I think as long as we can have the funding for it, we can hire the right staff for it, it's going to be an excellent program. So I am a proponent for the right individuals, but again, those individuals need to be screened. I always have my clients sit down with a probation officer with a handbook so they know ahead of time, this is what you're getting into. It's not going to be a piece of cake, but the results I have seen are just amazing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Biviano.
I think the pros are enormous, and it's very hard to think of very many cons. Therapeutic courts have been shown by research and data over and over again to really be a great investment for the community monetarily and for public safety. We have the opportunity with these courts to really get to the underlying issues that are causing the behavior, as opposed to just giving someone a timeout without addressing the reasons that this happened, hoping they learn from their timeout, but at the same time expecting by the data that they're going to be right back in the court again shortly. When we talk about therapeutic courts, we're talking about keeping people safe in the future, not just punishing people for what happened in the past. And so I think that done well, there is every reason to do them. The only downsides of community courts are if they're not done properly, if they're not done in a way that is geared towards true therapeutic nature, if they let people off the hook without actually having accountability, and the money is wasted that way. But I trust us to do it right and make it a really positive thing for our community.
Thank you. Now, one last question here. We talked about it a little bit, about the important issues that face the public that appear before you, and just being specific, more specific about that and what you as a judge can do about the most important issue facing the people you see in the court system. We'll start with you, Mr. Biviano.
Sure. Well, there's multiple players in any court setting. There's the defendant, there's the plaintiff or the government, and there's the victim. And they all have different needs in that moment. And your job as a judge is to address all of their needs at the same time. And that's where the real art and the science of being a judge comes in, and that's why it's a true honor and privilege to do the job. My job as your judge is going to be to hold defendants accountable for breaking the law, to do that in a way that makes the defendant hopefully better off after the end of their punishment than beforehand, so they're less likely to reoffend. It's to provide some compensation, validation, and closure for the victim of that crime so they can move on with their lives as well. Those are the most important issues facing us. And for public safety, we need to get all three of those things right. And for public trust, we need to let everyone know that our courts are working hard to do those things right. So as we address the homelessness crisis and drugs and crime in our community, we need to trust that our courts are seeing all three of those things in equal measure and working their best.
Thank you. Ms. Kroll.
Yes, as I mentioned, the biggest thing that individuals have come up to me during campaigning is community safety. They say, why are individuals continually let out? They're arrested, they're let out, they pick up more charges. I hear their frustration and I see their frustration because I have the same frustration where we issue a warrant because they failed to appear. They're arrested on the warrant, but they don't even have the opportunity to come before me to address why they didn't appear the first time, and it's a frustrating cycle. So what I've been doing, and specifically in Airway Heights, if I see an individual who hasn't come to court, we can't address this matter, we can't progress forward until they're in front of me, is I will say no OR. I want them to come see me. I want to be able to address this. And then to be able to resolve the case in an efficient way, not to continue the case over and over and over again. There are exceptions for justifiable reasons, but we need them in front of us. We need to hold them accountable sooner, and hopefully that addresses the community safety.
All right, thank you. We've explored a lot, and so now it's time for your closing statements. You will each have 30 seconds. Ms. Kroll.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's been a privilege. This is a decision I didn't come to lightly. I wanted to make sure not only after 20 years in the trenches that I could do this job, but do it well. That's why for the last 3 years I've been volunteering, I've been sitting on the bench, I've been getting involved. I would love the support of the community on November 8th.
Thank you. Mr. Biviano.
Thank you for watching this forum and being involved in your community decisions. It would be an honor and a privilege to serve as one of your district court judges. I promise to you that I will bring my passion and my record of service to the district court bench every single day. I think that my breadth of experience, working in all different parts of Spokane, in the trenches, so to speak, with people who are in crisis, in the trenches in court, whether at the federal level or the state level, and my experience on the bench all prepares me uniquely and very well to do the best job for you that I can.
And thank you. Thank you to our candidates for Spokane County District Court Judge 6. They again are Andrew Biviano and Deanna Kroll. And so reminders to you as the voters, you need to register to vote online or by mail by October 31st. Same-day registration up to and on Election Day can be done at the County Elections Office and Center Place in Spokane Valley. Ballots will be mailed to registered voters October 19th through the 21st. Ballots must be postmarked, no stamp necessary though, or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes in voter services centers no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, November 8th. For locations of ballot boxes or voter service centers, information about accessible voting units, or other questions about casting your ballot, contact the Spokane County Elections Office at 409-477-2320 or go to spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for the candidates as well as voters' guides can be found on the website of the Spokane County Elections Office. Additional information about the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online guide, vote411.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, thank you to our candidates for their participation in this forum. We hope this has given you, the voters, information that will help you make an informed decision when marking your ballot by Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. For more information about the League, visit our website, lwvspokane.org. And thank you.